So our class is Intro to Water-Soluble Oils. Oh yeah, and my name's Asami Akinaga. You can call me Asami. And the first lesson that we're going to do is the color wheel. And we actually have to kind of relearn the color wheel. So this is a typical color wheel you might have learned in like elementary school. And I actually have this exact same color wheel poster. I have this poster, and I teach in the public schools as well. And so this is the exact poster I'll bring into like public school art classes and show them this poster. But it's actually very misleading, and it's not a great, accurate color wheel. And the reason for that is if you take the red and the blue from this color wheel, which are supposedly the primaries, so yellow, red, and blue are the primary colors on this color wheel. The idea is that you can mix every other color with the primary colors. So if you mix yellow and blue, you should get green. If you mix yellow and red, you should get orange. The problem is that with this color wheel, if you mix the red and blue primaries, you're supposed to get this violet secondary color. But as you can see from this little example here, you don't often get this like beautiful jewel tone violet color. What you end up getting is this really muddy, very dark color that's maybe a hint of purple, but mostly a really dark color. And so it's not a complete accurate color wheel. And it's really hard teaching this, for me, it's really hard teaching this in public school because you're kind of teaching the kids, you know, getting them off on the wrong foot, basically getting them started on the wrong foot. But the reason we stick to this color wheel and the reason we were taught this color wheel is just because of kind of like a force of habit. This is what we've always known. And it's really hard to kind of change the standard and change the mindset of, you know, people, because this is just what we've always been taught. And so, you know, oftentimes the kids will have this like really terrible tempera paint with like a red, really bright red, and like a really bright blue, and they'll try to mix their red and blue and try to get a purple, and they'll come up to me and be like, Mrs. Sami, this is not purple. This is like a really mucky dark color. And so we have to kind of relearn the color wheel, and I have to show you how to mix colors accurately, because this isn't very accurate of a color wheel. All right. So looking at how color blending works across different mediums, across different industries, actually in the lighting industry and anything to do with light, so your phone screens, your TV screens, LED lighting, stage lighting, they actually use an RGB primary, so red, green, and blue light. And the reason for that is that light reacts differently. And so when you mix red and green together, you actually can get yellow light. Green and blue makes a cyan colored light. Red and blue does indeed get you a purplish, magenta-ish light. And when you mix all three lights together, you get bright white light. In print, you might have noticed that your printing ink is on a CMYK color wheel. So C stands for cyan, magenta is M, Y is for yellow, and K is the black. So if you mix all three colors, if you mix the cyan, the magenta, and the yellow, it actually gets you black. And again, if you mix the yellow and the magenta, it gets you orange. The cyan and the yellow makes green. The cyan and the magenta gets you like a darker blue, indigo-ish, bluish purple. And the reason in print it works like this is that you can get pretty much all the colors that you need with just these three colors. And it's very efficient, very cost effective. And so that's why in printers, you'll see just CMYK. So the color wheel that we're gonna work on today that is more accurate for painting, for color mixing with our water-soluble oils, kind of combines both of these ideas. So the reason that, you know, green is so important is that it does help you make other colors. And you can see that it's left out of being a primary color in our traditional color wheel. It's just kind of like a secondary color. And, you know, in the traditional color wheel, we're also missing this magenta, which looks like it's going to be really helpful in making our purples. So the color wheel that you are going to be making today is called the Yirmby wheel. And it's called Yirmby because if you take the initials of yellow, red, magenta, and blue, it spells YRMB, and they just kind of pronounced it Yirmby. And then I don't know where the C and G went, but it's the Yirmby wheel. And so with this color wheel, you're going to get more accurate color mixtures. So you're going to mix, we're going to say that these are all the primaries. And so yellow and red makes a secondary orange. Red and magenta makes a secondary kind of deeper red. Magenta and blue are what we're going to use to make purple. Cyan and blue. For us, what we have is cerulean. So cerulean and blue is going to make this kind of in-between blue. And then the cyan and green is going to make like a blue-green. The green and yellow makes a yellow-green. So this is the wheel that we're going to be using today. And then you can also see that all of that is slowly going into a gradient of a neutral gray. So we'll talk about how to mix gray as well. And we'll have that in our very center of our circle. So this is what we're going to try to do today. I'm going to go start with yellow, cadmium red, magenta, ultramarine blue, and the cerulean. Go ahead and grab your palette knife, and we're going to mix the cerulean blue and our lemon yellow as our first color mixture for our green. And so you're going to need actually a lot more yellow than you do the cerulean. So I'm going to smash down some yellow on here. And it might actually be good to mix quite a bit of this, because if you've noticed, we've got other sections underneath that we're going to have to mix some more colors into. And so making a big puddle of green will ensure that you don't have to mix more later. So I've got a nice puddle of yellow here. Once you've grabbed the yellow, get your paper towel and wipe that paint off of your palette knife. You want to keep your puddles of color quite clean. And so cleaning off the paint off your palette knife and picking up the cerulean afterwards makes sure that there's not going to be any yellow in your cerulean. All right, and so you can see the ratio that I'm starting with here. This is a very tiny bit of cerulean versus a giant puddle of yellow. I might even do less cerulean. You can always add little bits of cerulean at a time, but if you add too much, it's just, you can tell that the blue is much stronger than the yellow, and so it will overtake the yellow quite quickly. So it's kind of just like spreading, spreading peanut butter on toast or something like that. You're just going to keep the palette knife fairly flat, maybe raised on, one side, but fairly flat, and you're just smashing it kind of into your puddle there. Keep your puddle small, so you can always kind of, if you're spreading out too much, pick it up, pick the whole pile up, just kind of scrape it up, and then smash it back down. So I pick the whole thing up and I can just smash it back down and then spread like you're spreading it on toast. So this is quite light. This is like a really light green that I have. And that's actually going to be good for my, my yellow-green mixture. But I need more of a grass green, like a really neutral in-between green. It's not going to be too yellowy and it's not going to be too blue. And so I think I can start adding a little bit more cerulean into this at a time. I'm going to clean off my palette knife here so I can pick up more of this blue, more of the cerulean blue, and mix that in. I want to get a nice in-between green. It's not going to be too yellow green and it's not going to be too blue green. Feels just in the middle. It's starting to look pretty good. Might add just one final bit of blue. It really does give you like just such a natural kind of leafy grass green. You can imagine this kind of being on like a fresh young leaf, a leaf that just started sprouting. It's really beautiful green. I've got a puddle of yellow going there, and I'm going to grab just the tiniest bit of red, and you can always do little bits at a time. And the red is just so deceivingly strong. So you can see I have just the tiniest little bit on the end of my palette knife here for just this whole giant chunk of yellow. And it really is deceivingly strong. I've got a pretty good orange going already. And you can see I'm mixing these colors right in between my yellow and red. That helps me to determine if it looks like it's really in between or not. Making sure that my color mixture, that I'm mixing it in between those two colors, is gonna help me, before I even put it on my color wheel, it's gonna help me, you know, to judge, does it feel like it's in between yellow and red? And so this is clearly still way too much yellow. I'm looking at it and going, well, that's a huge jump from this to this. So I'm gonna mix little bits of red in at a time, but again, it's deceivingly strong. So make sure you're doing little bits at a time. Orange, feel free to take a picture and let me know. All right. The next color after that, we're gonna mix an even blend of the cadmium red and the magenta, so right in between these two. And this is gonna give you actually what you would think is a red. This cadmium red, you might have noticed, is quite orangey. It's kind of like a red that's really, really, really close to a red orange. And the magenta is clearly more purpley. And so mixing these two together gives you kind of like a deep red. And so we're going to grab some of that cerulean. And I'm going to do that down here. And we're going to grab that magenta. You can try a 50-50 mixture to start with and see how that looks. I think I accidentally grabbed more magenta than cerulean. But you can see how that's turning into a really nice, vivid violet purple. The yellow, red, and blue. I'm gonna try getting that gray. And technically, if you mix everything on your palette together, you should kind of get like a gray. But I'm gonna show you how to make a really quick and easy gray. So To make a really quick and easy gray, you just want to mix white with black. But I did not tell you to buy a black from the tube. And so we also have to learn how to mix black. And to mix black, you're going to use the darkest value. So we're going to grab our ultramarine blue, smash that down, and we're going to mix our red, our cadmium red, into that. And so this is going to show you what that yucky purple looks like. Remember, I was telling you that red and blue don't make a good purple. So let's grab just tiny bits of red at a time, and you'll see almost immediately it's pretty much going to look kind of like a black. It doesn't make a very good purple, but it does help to make a black. This is just to muddy it up some more. We want to lose that bluish tone. We want it to be black. And so to lose that bluish tone, we're also going to mix some yellow into that. That sounds counterintuitive because yellow is such a lighter value. But remember, yellow is also weak. So mixing a little bit of yellow in there, it's not going to do that much unless you're using like a ton of yellow. Now mixing a yellow into that ultramarine blue and red mixture, if you had a lot more blue and yellow, right now you might be looking at like a foresty green. That's what I'm looking at. It's like a deep foresty green. That means if you're like me and you have like a foresty, really deep green, like it's almost like a black green, means you don't have enough red. So you can pick up a little bit more red and mix that into your foresty green. So basically it's just 3 colors. It's the ultramarine blue, the lemon yellow, and the cadmium red. And you're just going to mix little bits of it until you're losing really any hint of any of the 3. It's not going to look very blue, it's not going to look very red, it's not going to look very yellow. And the reason I tell you to mix your own black and your own gray is because it's going to give you a much richer color. So the black that they sell in tubes is very artificial looking, and it's going to make your paintings just look so much more artificial and not natural at all. Mixing your own black and your own grays, it gives you a more natural color to what we actually see in real life and in nature. All right. And again, if you're mixing and it still looks kind of like a purpley black, you can add a little bit more yellow. So always think like the opposite. So if it looks purpley, add some yellow. If it looks green, add some red, and so on and so forth. So I've got maybe just a slightly purpley black. I'm gonna add just a tiny bit of yellow here, and I think I'd be good. So that's your black. That's how you can make a really quick, easy black. But you can make black out of multiple different color combinations. It doesn't have to be these 3 colors. You can really experiment. This is just an easy way that I choose to do it. Throw a bit of white into this mixture, and that's how you'll be able to get your gray. We're looking for like a neutral gray, nothing too dark charcoal gray and nothing too light, kind of like a super faint gray. Just like a nice neutral gray. Also, if you throw white into it, you'll be able to see if you've got a good, neutral black or not, or if you ended up with something a little bit too far one of the colors. And you can see I've got pretty decent gray, maybe slightly purpley. And I can throw a little bit of yellow into that, even on top of this gray. It's ever so slight purpley gray. Now just a tiny bit more yellow into this, and that should do it.